Okay, so my presentation is on women in Iran. Here, Iran is often called Iran, but properly it's Iran. So, for the sake to do justice to these women, I will continue saying it Iran. And Iran currently has a population of 90 million people, an equal ratio of women to men, and and borders the countries Afghanistan, Iraq, and Turkey. So, to kind of understand how these people became known and how they're struggling, they're mainly known for their 1976 revolution. So before 1979, there was the Safid dynasty who made Shia Islam the official religion. There is Shia and Sunni Muslims, and the most popular type of Muslim is Shia between Iran and Iraq. 95% of Muslims currently in Iran are Shia. The next dynasty was the Reza Pahlavi, and through the 1906 Constitution, they were appointed monarch. He ruled during World War I and really kick-started the name for Iran in the oil industry. His son furthered this, Mohammad Reza Shah. He ruled during World War II. He had a very westernized vision for the country. He wanted a more Americanized economy. He did help create a middle class. His numbers for the oil industry are going from $555 billion in 1964 to a little over 10 years later in 1976 to $20 billion. Now, what this did do is kind of eliminate a lot of Iranian culture for Iranian people in Iran. So, kind of made it hard for Iranians to see a good economy in their own culture. You know, America, it's the American culture, it's the American economy. In other countries, it's the German culture, it's the German economy. So that's kind of how Iranians saw this. Less jobs came about, and because of the oil revenues, farmers were being displaced. More jobs, less jobs than degrees. And this guy, I'm not going to try and say his name, but he got his name during the White Revolution. He spoke out for it, against it, and kind of made Iranians see a corrupt regime. And he was very known for being, I guess you could say, a strict Muslim. Not really. He just really saw a woman being a stay-at-home wife, fulfilling a female's role in the home, etc. So we really see before 1979 women getting jobs, degrees, etc. And then during the revolution, we really see a image put on women to be this certain way, this certain whatever. So their rights, marital rights, rights of children, and child marriages seem to really take a hold on women during this time period. So women like Sally Field married an Iranian man. They married in America, and she currently has a movie about her called Not Without My Daughter. And basically, she married the Iranian man, and they hadn't met the father's side of the family. She did have a daughter. So they went to visit during this revolution, and she ended up being held hostage by her husband with her daughter in Iran for about 6 months until she could escape. There was no U.S. embassy, and she was in a manipulative, abusive marriage and whatnot. So she was really held accountable to her dress code. Everything was just really put stern on her. So she also lost the rights to her kids. So if she did have the chance to divorce her husband and escape to America. But if she did divorce her husband, even in America, he would have the rights to her. Currently, women do not have rights to children in Iran. So any divorce, the kids go to the male. And so she didn't want to leave her daughter because it risked her daughter for child marriage. And now this is also a risk. So currently, the age to get married is 9, and then it was also 9, 13 for boys. And so it's Iran is 49% female, 3% get married before 15 years old, 18% before 18 years old, and 8,000 of the males in those marriages are 10 plus years older than those girls. Obviously, those marriages are not healthy marriages at all in any way. And looking at what the Quran and Bible have to say about these child marriages and how it's wrong can really open the eyes to the Iranian people and the young minds of Iranian people who have opened their eyes to this, understand that it's wrong. And it really does come down to the government changing their eyes or how they view the Quran, etc., how they think the Iranian culture should be, because Iranians are fighting for this. The Quran says that women have rights similar to men equitably, although men have a degree of responsibility above them. And Allah is Almighty, all wise. So even though they are equitably to men, the Quran does say they have a degree of responsibility above them. I interpret this as simply the man maybe is more protective, per se, just stuff like that. And I could stand here and talk about how, from the Christian perspective, Islam is wrong and does contradict itself, but it will not change the issue at hand. And if we look at it from the standpoint that even if the Quran is trying to say this is wrong and helping these people see that this is wrong, even from the culturally acceptable. In the Old Testament times of the Bible, it was culturally acceptable for women to marry giving. So I did find this passage in Exodus. Please the master that he redeemed. He has no right to marry another woman. He must not be opposing the marriage. Does not provide for when this was a woman more currently looking at how women are suffering from this revolution. Masa Amini, she died in September 2022, and she died while being detained by the morality police. She was traveling with her younger brother, got off a train, and her hijab or headscarf was simply put off. She was not in dress code as well. She was detained by the morality police. And the morality police does have female workers as well within that. And her family did receive her cause of death being due to a brain surgery she had a decade prior, gave her a heart attack, stroke, organ failure, and like a seizure. So that's how she died apparently. But there are photos of her being bruised, bleeding, you name it, just like beaten to death, really. So currently, people have used her death and started uproaring and protests, really shouting out. So we really see the young minds of Iran understanding their text, understanding this is not culturally okay, religiously okay. It's really just the government. We see a party in Iran called the Persian Shia clerks that are very influential, rich, etc., that have that traditional mindset, you could say. Currently, Hadezi, she's a TikToker. I really couldn't find any news, like media, that wasn't exaggerating the life of a current Iranian woman. Because from what I understood, I had to email a professor at Wofford College called Dr. Bastani. She's a professor of physics. She did live there, and she told me that currently women can drive, women have some freedom. They can go on a girls' trip, get some coffee together, go shopping, and really the dress code isn't that bad. Desi does a good job of really romanticizing her life. I relate to her very well. She is like me. She's from America, but she goes to different countries like Iran. I go to Greece and visits her grandparents. So here's a TikTok of her summer. There's no audio. So she really romanticizes it, and like you saw, she was dancing around a bikini, but really their rights become minimized when they're in court or when they're trying to like get a job. It's usually a man above that, and they're really working in protest with saying women, life, freedom, obviously in not in English but in Farsi, really trying to spread the word that women should have some say when getting a job or whatnot. And the literacy rate right now is 85 to 5% of females can read, while only 80% of males can read. So there's currently like females are working, there are young minds. It's mainly just the government that needs to see this traditional mindset is not what they want. So, any questions?
Good job, Drew. It's one of those things I really appreciated the work you did on the paper, especially. It was cool. It's a lot of the stuff you're talking about isn't cool. Interesting to see in contrast, right? Contrast between what women, the type of culture that women on, and I think maybe it's a different question in other Middle Eastern countries. And so yeah, there's a lot of positives when women are allowed to drive. I'm trying to be really sensitive because I don't want to really the issue. I'm happy that women were allowed to drive. At what point were they given that right? That ability? Guys, can I get you to oh, thank you, sir. At what point were they given their ability?
I don't really know. I think at the peak of the revolution, women couldn't drive, but I think as the protests had begun, so I want to say maybe around 2020, during quarantine, etc., nobody was really driving. And then after that, it really allowed women to too. But it also could have been starting late 1990s when we were
Yeah, different countries with a whole different bag of politics and groups arguing with each other and so on. The first, I looked it up just to confirm, the first country in the Middle East, other than Israel, to allow, and the reason, but the first country in the Middle East to allow women the opportunity to drive was Saudi Arabia, and that was in 1998. It's interesting because what you were describing was there was a point in time where everything was essentially about as advanced as it was in the United States. And this revolution, you would think, like a lot of times when I think revolution, I think like a push forward, right? A move towards progress. But it seems in a lot of ways that revolution you were describing was like a big step backwards. Is that an accurate way to describe it?
Yeah, I think these women wanted to have the freedoms they had then, but in their own culture and celebrate it in their own culture.
Right.
And obviously, the women now haven't inherited that and are strong enough to push forward. It was trying to be a step forward and it became a step back.
Real quick, and then I'll open it up to everybody else. Can you describe for us the difference? You mentioned not all Muslims practice Islam the same way. There's a difference, like a couple of the groups that you mentioned, the Shiite Muslims and I don't remember if I heard any of the other groups in there, but could you, even if it's like, which one of those groups are the more traditional, wanting to, for lack of a better way to say it, move backwards, versus the ones that are a little more progressive, would like to see more freedoms extended and so on?
I don't really know which one's more progressive, which one's not, because they're really similar, and the only difference is who they believe the first caliph is. One of them believes it's like Abu Bakr, and I don't remember the other one, but that's really all I could find about that. I think it really just depends on where you are in Iran, what Muslim you run into, how strict it is. In other countries, like, I mean, they're bordering Afghanistan, so even in Afghanistan, I can't imagine how those freedoms
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of fascinating stuff because whatever, like when we talk about women's rights movements in the United States, you know, the early 20th century feminist movements and stuff like with the right to vote and all this kind of stuff, women's suffrage, like even just having jobs and so on. It seems like there's a century between whatever we were experiencing in the early 20th century, now they're experiencing in the early 21st century, which is really fascinating. All right, classmates, y'all got any questions or comments for Georgia? Thoughts?
You did a good job, and I like how you like compared, like right when you brought up the Quran, you compared it instantly to the Bible. this kind of goes to my question. Like, as Christians, how can we like look at their religion? I feel like looking at their religion and telling them they're doing it wrong, that wouldn't, I don't know if that would really like what, I guess I'm asking like, what would the significance be with that? Cause like, I'm sure they can look at Christianity and be like, oh, we're doing some stuff wrong, but like, we would probably just brush that off. So I guess I was just wondering what like our approach should be to fix the issue.
So to fix the issue, I did say that it really wouldn't help telling Muslims that they're wrong, because it is difficult to change someone's mind after they've been following a certain religion after so long. I'm sure everyone here is either Protestant, Baptist, non-denominational. It'll be hard for them to want to change a denomination after following it for 20 plus years of their life. So really trying to not change their mind, but help the Iranian government see that even with their religion, they're doing stuff wrong and whatnot. But even if you wanted to go from the standpoint of telling them that, trying to convert them, saying that, look, this is wrong. In some ways, Muslims do follow the Bible, right? Like as a side thing, in a way.
So Muslims have a tremendous amount of respect, is a good way to put, like, it's the word that I see used most often. They have a tremendous amount of respect for the Bible. They have a whole lot of respect for Jesus. And the Quran speaks about Jesus and speaks about the Bible. And what you mentioned, like, there's a lot of internal contradiction between that. Because on one hand, they'll say stuff like, yes, we should respect the Bible and everything that the Bible says is true. But then when you point out where the Bible contradicts the Quran, then that's when things get really dicey. Or for instance, Muslims are supposed to respect Jesus as a prophet, and you know that they really they believe that Jesus was the most faithful Muslim outside of Muhammad himself. And so so when you say like, yeah, they're all about it. Well, I mean, like they have a lot of respect for it. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, you could try, but I think it's not going to change their mind if you're going and telling them you're all wrong and whatnot. I think using it to show them, but at the end of the day, it's not like we can do much for the Iranian government, like stop up to their current leader and whatnot. Really, just a prayer is enough.
And to that point, Cam, it's like I see a lot of Christians wanting to do this thing where it's like, see what Islam is doing to women. You jump over here in Christianity, and hey, it's interesting to me how that argument doesn't work very well. I get it; it makes sense to me, but I've heard testimony from Muslim women where it's like, oh, the Christians just don't take care of their women. And so it's a really tricky conversation to have, and it's a lot of what Georgia was saying. Like you did a really good job where it's like, this is the culture they grew up in, and I sorry, not sorry for bringing this up again. That's the strength of what culture does to your belief system. That whatever argument you want to give, when it's someone's lived experience, it's really hard. It's really hard to reason with that, right? It's really hard to argue against that. So Lawson, do you have your hand up?
Is most of the government in Iran, are they all men, or is there like women in the government?
I think women have tried to run for political office, but failed because it's always seen that a man is better.
Is it voting, or is it like?
In the Iranian Revolution, there was a vote, and women were allowed to vote, and I think they are currently allowed to vote, but I want to say it's definitely a little rigged. Probably like only 50% of their votes count. The only democracy ever seen in Iran was with this one man who tried running the oil industry, who was supported by America. And once he left, just like poof like that, like there's no research telling me how he left. Democracy left with him. So that was, ever since then it's been like autocracy, monarchy, stuff like that.
It's really like as crazy as our political system is, and as like back and forth as like everybody's worried about elections and stuff like this. At least we have a system, because so women had the right to vote, they lost it, and because of who was elected, they lost it the following next whatever, and it just takes so much work and effort to actually get any of those things back, and it's volatile. The word is volatile.
just think it's interesting because, like, so I know Muslim people, especially, like, I do martial arts, so I will train with them a lot. And there's one in particular I've had this sort of discussion with of, like, women and how they treat women compared to, like, Christians or just people in the West in general. And the way he looks at it is that we allow women more freedom, but it's not, for them, they don't see it as a good thing. For them, they see the way they treat their women like you're supposed to treat your wife like basically a princess or a queen. Kind of keep them away from the general public, provide for them, all this sort of thing. But obviously, they don't have as much freedoms. But he also agrees with like us when we'll say the political situation in the Middle East with women is like awful. He has no clue how it got to that level of extremism. Do you know maybe what the like source of this like high level of extremism and oppression of women came from? Because that's not what the Quran teaches.
Right. So the young minds of Iran understand that's not what the Quran teaches, and they really are trying. I think it truly just came from them feeling like their culture wasn't there anymore. I know if I felt like I lost my culture, I would fight to have it back. So I think truly just the fight for them to have their culture back, it just grew, and it kind of became, you want it back, here it is, and then equal the fist on top of it. That's basically, and I think it really just kind of happened because the type of Muslims that want to treat the women as princesses, but to another level, had that power to make that happen, and had the support, but also had the extra power to make it to their one.
So, lost this question kind of answered it, but I don't know if the government really works there, but has there been any, have like campaigns or anything in the government to try to change things with all these protests going on, or are they kind of just stuck in their ways? Because it seems like they're loosening up with that TikTok video and your explanation and stuff. Like, it seems like they're loosening up more and more. But has there been any big pushes in the government to try to fix it?
It's kind of hard to tell. I think it depends on who the leader is. Currently, like, a lot of them are kind of blind to what the people are supporting. I know at the beginning people, what was his name? The Mohammed Reza Shah, when people started speaking against him, it was because they all thought that he thought the people speaking against him were communists. He didn't realize it was the actual people fighting for their culture back. So that's kind of what's happening, I guess, probably. There's no